So it is 6:02. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody. And Ray had a request to kind of everybody go around and introduce themselves. Won't take but just a moment. So Nadine, if you want to go ahead, you're kind of first up on my screen here. Why don't you go ahead and say hi and what area of the neighborhood you live in? That would be great.
Hi, I'm Nadine, mom of 2 girls. My husband and I live in at the corner of Lishy and Edwin, at that house on the corner that's across from Tom Joy Park. So this is my second meeting. Glad to be here.
Welcome back, welcome back. Ray, you're up next. You're muted. Oops.
I was so polite.
Yes,
my wife and I'm Ray Sovereign. My wife is Diane Sesniak, and we live in the 1600 block of Lishy. The house, big white house with the red shutters, and the flamingo party socially distancing with their masks on is in my front yard. So.
Okay, Ray. Commander Imhof, I think we kind of can identify you by your uniform, but go ahead.
All right, I'm David Imhof. I'm the commander of the East Precinct. I've been at the East Precinct for 9 years and been with the department for 28 years.
Thank you, sir. Sean, you're next.
Hey, everybody. I'm Sean Parker. I think I know most of you. I do not live in Highland Heights, but I am the council member for District 5.
You live pretty close, though.
Yeah, I live maybe a block north of Highland Heights.
Capitol Heights, right?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of competing groups that sort of lay claim to this area. It's a little bit confusing. So,
as long as there's no turf wars, we'll be okay.
I don't think the turf wars will extend south of Trinity,
Good. You stay on your side of the street. Andrew, you're next.
Hey, I'm Andrew Demolot. I live over on Pullen Avenue. My wife was here last time for the meeting, but this is my first one, so glad to be here.
Welcome, welcome, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Miss Anna, your turn.
Hi, I'm Anna. I live on Gatewood with my husband, and this is my second meeting, so I'm excited to be here as well.
Welcome, welcome. Miss Sandra, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Sandra. I also live on Gatewood with Martha Carroll, who's at another Zoom meeting right now. So hi. Where in Gatewood do you live, Anna?
I live at 301.
Oh, okay. I'm 325.
Oh.
Sounds like we're pretty close.
Yeah, I'll come say hi next time.
Yeah, me too.
Walking.
Well, we all pretty much live within 1 square mile of each other. But anyway. Rachel, you and Brad are up next.
Hi, I'm Rachel Morbeard. It's my husband, Brady Beard. And we live on the south end of Luton Street. And this is
and it is Brady. I'm sorry, I said Brad. I got most of the letters right. Kelsey, you're next.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Osman. This is also my first neighborhood association meeting, and I've lived on Lucille Street for a little over a year now.
Awesome. Fantastic. And Ben, last but not least, then it'll be me right quick.
Yeah, I'm Ben Stauffer. I also live on Lucille. I've been there for a little bit over a year also. I'm in the 100 block and been coming to the meetings here for the last few months as much as I can.
And we greatly appreciate it. And last but not least, I'm Gordon Stacy Harmon. I'm the chairperson of the Neighborhood Association. Welcome to one and all. We're grateful that you took time out of your busy days, but we all know that the reason you're here is because it's hot outside and air conditioning is glorious. Anyway, so moving right along. Oh, and by the way, I live over on Joyce Circle, just at the very back of the circle, right next to the nursery. So then let's move right along. Commander Imhof, I know you guys have busy schedules on Thursday evenings, so I will turn the floor over to you. Welcome again.
All right. Hello, everybody. For those who, I heard a lot of people saying this is like their first meeting or second meeting. Typically, we're not on Zoom, right, Gordon? So when everything is normal. And what happens is Sergeant Fisher, who's our community coordinator, or myself will come to these meetings. We'll go over the crime that has happened in your neighborhood, since the last time we met, and then we'll talk about anything going on overall with the precinct itself. We're open to any questions, but one thing we want to point out is if you do have questions between now and the next meeting, you don't have to wait for the meeting. You can just call us. You can call the precinct or email Sergeant Fisher or myself, and we'll be happy to get back with you about anything going on, any concerns. If you just see a police car with blue lights down the street from you one night and you want to say, hey, I wonder what happened there, just call us, email us, happy to answer anything. And I think if you talk to folks that have been in the group for a while, they know we get back with folks pretty quickly. So anyway, you've had 12 incidents since last time we met. We had 3 aggravated assaults. One was over at the 400 block of Edwin. In that, this was a dispute among neighbors. They were arguing, and the victim stated he walked away and then heard a gunshot, then turned around and saw the suspect, the neighbor with a gun in his hand. So we went over there, we've took no injuries, and we're investigating that. And then we had one over on Ward Street, the 900 block of Ward, and we had 2 victims on that one saying that another neighbor had pointed a gun at them. Now, later on, there's an allegation from the suspect saying that they stole his dog, and there was actually video evidence of that. So there wasn't anything to sustain the gun charge, but the stolen dog charge actually, there was videotape of that, so that case is kind of proceeding forward. One residential burglary over at the 1500 block of Meridian. Somebody removed the window AC unit, went inside the house, and then took a couple other AC units. And we had one theft from a building. This was, the victim stated they believed the suspect, who is a former boyfriend, took some money off of a table. And then we had a theft from a porch over at the 1300 block of Pinnock. We already talked about the dog over on Ward Street. And then somebody took a toy gun from the victim's front yard over on Gatewood. And then we had 3 license plates. Well, we had 1 temporary tag taken from a vehicle, then 2 license plates taken from vehicles. One was over on the 1400 block of Dickerson, 1700 block of Luton, and 1500 block of Jones. And then we had 1 vehicle taken over at 1900 block of Meridian. And that's where the victim stated they gave a friend a ride gave him a ride and left the vehicle running. The victim left the car for a second and returned, and the car was gone. So those are the ones that you had. Overall for the precinct, last year we saw a record low with violent crime in East Nashville, or East Precinct. We saw a record low of street robberies. We saw the second lowest year we've ever seen with aggravated assaults. And we saw the 4th year in a row of having the lowest amount of residential burglaries. So this year hasn't been as good for us. Right now we're up about 3% in overall crime. A large part of that is car break-ins. We've seen a huge influx of car break-ins this year. And we've also seen a very big increase in aggravated assaults. Not necessarily in your all's neighborhood. We're seeing it more over in what we call 11 zone, which is off of Shelby Street, Casey Place area. And then we've also seen an increase down in the River Chase area, the Osam Levy, McFerrin Park area. We've seen an increase over there. Last night, we had a shooting over in Casey where 5 people were shot. So we've seen an increase in violence over there. Part of the issue is we have a community engagement team that we established well over a year ago over in Casey, which is completely community engagement. They go out there, they're on bikes, they're on foot, they interact with the kids, they interact with the schools. Everybody knows who they are, they know everybody. However, the problem is with the amount of protests that we've had over the last few months, or the last couple months, they've been involved in that. There's been at least a few protests every day. They're bike certified, so they have been tasked with assisting in that. So they really haven't been over there very much. And then this past week, they've all been sidelined because of coronavirus. We've had one person that tested positive, and they were all around that person, so they all had to quarantine at home. So we lost that entire team for over a week now. So I think the lack of presence hasn't helped us over in that area. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Still, when you look at the numbers from a historical standpoint, even though they're a little higher than last year, you know, what they were compared to what they were 5 and 6 and 7 years ago is still very, very low compared to what they have been in the past. But with that said, I'm open to any questions. Anybody has anything they want to ask me, I'm happy to answer the best I can. You can just speak up. I'm not going to.
Thanks, Commander. Yeah, go ahead, and if you have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask Commander Imhof.
How about Rachel Moore? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I posted this yesterday on Facebook, but I'm curious. I tried to call non-emergency yesterday. We had 2 ATVs speeding around the neighborhood, and when I posted, a lot of people reported that they were driving on sidewalks. Someone had a theft of a gas can from their porch from these folks. They watched them do that. And I'm just curious, not an emergency, non-emergency was busy. What should I do in that instance? Or like, what can we do? Because we think we know the neighborhood together where these folks are.
Sure. If you know where they are, I mean, obviously call. You know, to be honest with you, we've been very short here lately because we've had, I think, with the COVID stuff, I think the other day we were down like 9 people just because of that. And then we're short already. We have 148 less folks than we normally should have right now. So we're trying to get to all the calls as quickly as we can. It's just a little bit more difficult than it has been in the past. If you know where they are and you say, hey, I think, and we don't want you to go approach these folks. We don't want you to have any conflict with anybody. But if you know where they are, you can email myself, Sergeant Fisher. We'll go out there and talk to them. Sergeant Fisher and I do all kinds of home visits. And we'll go out there and talk to them. And if there's evidence that they were taking anything off the front porches or gas cans like you were talking about, let us know that. We'll address that as well. I apologize that we couldn't get somebody out there quicker. I just know we've had a big summer and we're getting a big influx of calls, and I know B-Detail, we've been running like 7 cars for the whole precinct on the second shift. So it's been a little bit more problematic because of the resources that we've been short a little bit. But yeah, absolutely. Email me, call me, and we'll go out and check that out.
Commander Imhof, this is not a question, but for those folks that don't know, we have a lot of shelterless people in this community, and there are 2 particular women that live up by the water towers. And when the big straight line winds came through, they had trees fall on them, and it wasn't an hour till 5 of your crew were up there digging them out and making sure that they were okay. And I wanted folks to know that it's not just the patrolling and the police stuff. It's like you go in the middle, of a storm and rescue these women. So I just, shout out to you guys.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll piggyback off that. I actually had some teenagers that were walking across our yard because we live on a corner lot, and my dog got out after them and they pepper sprayed my dog. And when I called the police, they were here within 5 minutes to check on the dog. And he's okay. He survived. But it was very nice of y'all.
Oh, no, thanks. Anything we can do to help. Like I said, I think something that Sergeant Fisher and I try to do as much as we can is on some of these calls, it doesn't require an officer to go out there right that second. In that case, obviously we did. But we're happy to follow up on stuff. I mean, we get a lot of calls on some mental health issues, some homeless camp issues, and Sergeant Fisher and I will go out and try to see what we can do to kind of alleviate those issues without, trying to do it in the least invasive way. We try not to arrest folks unless we absolutely have to, and if we can navigate through that, we do our best to do it.
So that actually brings up an interesting question that I have. I mean, over the course of the last few weeks, of course, it's been fireworks season. I mean, lots of fireworks going off, and there seems to be a differing opinion of, do you report these people that are, illegally shooting off fireworks, or do you not waste the police time in calling these in? As the commander of the East Precinct, what do you recommend in a situation like that, where it's not something that is got anybody in immediate harm, but it is a public safety issue, and it is something that is not legal, knowing that you can't really respond right away? Do you still want neighbors to call and report situations like that? Or
if you got it, please call us. The issue is like on the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. I mean, we're aware there's going to be fireworks. We got it. On those particular situations, and we'll get an influx of calls on the 4th of July. And the problem is this, is when we go out, and this is just an issue, is when we go out and somebody has fireworks, we can't just take them and put them in a property room. Property room won't take them because they're explosives. We have to call the bomb squad to come get them. And if you think about what the delay is in trying to call the bomb squad out there for a couple Roman candles, it can be problematic. So that's why it's a little bit more, it's not as easy. You would think it would be simple. We go out there, we can cite somebody, take their fireworks, put them in the property room. Property room's not going to take them because they're considered, even if it seems silly that some minor fireworks, you know, they have the rules and we can't put them in the property room. So we have to have the bomb squad, or we call it HDU unit, has to come and dispose of that stuff. So that's why it's a little bit more problematic than just going out there and just taking care of it. But yes, if it's like if it's just somebody out in the street, and it's not like the 4th of July, yeah, absolutely call us. We'll go out there, we'll talk to them, we'll try to get something done. And you know, obviously right now we're trying not to arrest folks, as you know, unless we absolutely have to because of COVID. We're trying to keep the jails not populated because we don't want to spread this any more than it needs to be. But yeah, absolutely call us. We can always go out there and address it with folks. But yeah, it's a little problematic on holidays just because of those, because every precinct's getting 1 million calls for them, and there's only so many bomb squad guys to go out and take care of it too. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and you know, it's a balancing act, right? You know, you want people to enjoy themselves, and you know, little bottle rockets and things like that, not that big a deal, but you know, these larger fireworks that shoot 30, 40, 50, sometimes up to 100 feet in the air. It is a safety concern, especially with the density of homes, and of course the potential that somebody could get hurt. So anyway, that was just something.
We'll actually come down and talk to them. And if there's a neighbor across the street that's always doing it, again, and if we're tied up, call Fisher and me. We'll go out there and talk to them.
Okay, cool. Did anybody have any other questions, comments, feedback for the commander before he has to run on to the next one?
I did want to say, I know I missed the beginning of the report, so I don't know if you touched on any of the stuff that's been happening around me, but we're working with some officers and we've had like a really good response for a couple incidents, things like some shots fired, some bullet casings found, an attempted like forced entry into a house while somebody was home. And then I had a neighbor who caught an individual like on like their footage yielding a weapon, but they like immediately came onto their property, kind of like entered their garage and immediately like changed their mind for whatever reason. But we've had this like kind of burst recently around me, and in my area we have tons of Airbnbs, so even though while all the neighbors are connecting on things and trying to keep an eye out for one another, I think we're just seeing this kind of strange, not a pattern emerge over here. I don't know if it's like a singular individual as opposed to like some big, you know, surge, but I'm wondering, are you guys short-staffed to the point that like we couldn't request like the occasional like cruiser to just drive through the area as a like disincentive? Because I feel like we're definitely, there's something weird going on right now over here.
Yeah, we can definitely do extra patrols. I mean, every area has a zone car assigned to it. Okay. And we can let that zone car on all 3 shifts know about a particular block that's having more issues than others, and just have them ride through there extra times as more than they need. If
there's like a slow period or something, sure, and they can just kind of like, yeah, I'll swing by. I just think if there was maybe that extra layer, like obviously we try to make it clear that we are all like know each other and have these conversations, but if we can make it obvious to anybody who might be observing us, I mean, it'd be great to have that police layer of just like, oh, sure, there's extra eyes.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think you've talked to Sergeant Fisher this week, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay, because he and I talked about it too. Okay. So yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? If not, Commander, thank you as always for your time. Thank you for your attention to our neighborhood. Thank you and your entire precinct crew for doing everything that you guys are doing. We're behind you, so you know, hang in there. It'll get better one day, I'm sure.
I appreciate it. Again, if anybody has any questions between now and the next meeting, just yell at us. You don't have to wait till now. So take care.
Thank you, Commander. Have a very good evening. Okay, got a couple of last minute folks that dropped in here. Courtney has arrived. We started off the meeting just doing a quick roundtable because there were so many new people in. Courtney is on our steering committee, and she also lives over on Lishi, right close to Lishi and Douglas, but not right on the corner. She's just a few houses up. And then Lee, she's here, I guess, but it looks like her video and her mic is muted. She lives over close to Nadine. Does she live right behind you, Nadine? Or in the, she lives in the, hey, there she is. Hey, Lee, you want to introduce yourself right quick? I think you might be muted. Well, you were muted, but I'm still not hearing you. I'm not good at lip reading. I'm sorry. Okay, she may be back later. Anyway, she's, I think this is her first meeting, so welcome to her. Alrighty, so Commander has completed his portion of the agenda, and right quick, we'll turn it over to our infamous council member. Thank God you're not as infamous as the previous one. Sean, welcome. I yield the floor to you, sir.
Equally infamous, different reasons.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, again, thank you all for having me. I think I'm actually glad that two of our neighbors on Lucille are here, because there's a gentleman who lives in Cleveland Park who has been asking me a lot of questions about 223 Lucille Street, which I believe is a single family lot with a single family home on it right now. It is in a designated neighborhood evolving area, and under the supplemental policy, it's an R4 subdistrict, I believe. That might not mean anything to y'all, but essentially what he would like to do there is purchase the property and zone it to build 2 on that lot. So I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. You know, I haven't made a decision about it. I'll probably ask him to come to a Highland Heights meeting if he does actually decide to move forward with it. But it's the property at 223 that he's looking at, and that might be a zoning proposal that he tries to move forward with here in the near future. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Is that just a switch to R6?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it'd be R6-A because the city really isn't putting R6 anywhere where there's alleys within the urban core.
Yeah.
And can we make sure that it has the new code for not short-term rentals? I can't remember the dash number, whatever that is.
So the -NS districts that we established, those are not applicable to either single or 2-family zonings, because single and 2-family zonings, as of now, they already don't allow non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And that was really what we were kind of trying to make a dent in with that legislation. So there is no NS district for single and 2-family zonings because they already don't allow non-owner occupied or commercial style Airbnb activity.
But they could allow for owner occupied.
Yeah, and like if he owned both of those units and lived in one of them, he could Airbnb the other one. That's how it works in R6. You got to either own, you have to own both of them basically in order to get a permit in one of them.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, that's what I'm trying to do with mine. So,
yeah.
Except his would probably be 2, you know, fuller houses than what my guest apartment is. I mean, I don't have a problem with that location-wise. It seems okay to me.
Yeah, he's a little bit further in from Dickerson than you are, which is kind of the only real difference between the two situations. But it is still neighborhood evolving, and it does still fit with the supplemental policy. So I don't have any, like, the thing I'm asking him to do is get a survey done, because a lot of the 2-on-1 builds over there have run into these problems where, you know, somebody's fence gets torn down, and then, well, I think one of our neighbors who's joining us here is dealing with this on a much larger scale, right? Actually, 2 of our neighbors here, Lee and Nadine, are dealing with this on a much larger scale right now. But even like small parcel by parcel, you know, 2-on-1 builds are causing all kinds of issues with property lines. So I'm asking him to do a survey before we kind of look at it as a neighborhood. And so moving on from that, Stacy, how do you want me to, I know you wanted to discuss the budget and the property tax increase. Do you want me to just give a little bit of background on sort of how we wound up where we are?
Well, and this is where I'm going to need to apologize to everyone. Last month we had talked about doing a separate Zoom meeting for such questions because we didn't really want to take up too much time in this meeting because we do try to keep these to an hour. But unfortunately with Sean's schedule, my schedule, we never really had an opportunity to get that together. So I guess really the big question is, how does everyone feel about scheduling a separate Zoom meeting just to discuss budgets, questions, concerns, and things of that nature? Would that be something that would be beneficial to everybody? I know we've had the budget question pretty much answered for the last 3 or 4 weeks on whether or not it was going to happen, but I'm just curious if that's something that would be beneficial to the neighborhood at large. And we've got a good sampling of people from across the neighborhood here tonight.
This is Ray. I'd like to, as part of that, have the opportunity to talk about the tax cap and your position on that for the 2% cap. We're having debate in my house, and I'm not sure that I understand how it impacts me. I know that my house is really over assessed just because of what happened in this community in the last 10 years. And that's having a 33% increase in my property tax. So that's a huge chunk because I'm retired. So if we could make that part of the discussion, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that part of the discussion. I can say just from what I've read of that referendum that's being proposed, it would not cap your assessed value or your actual tax burden. It would cap the rate. So if the assessor still came in and said, all of a sudden everything over here is worth $500,000, your taxes would still go up because of the way that state law structures how counties can levy property taxes. That cap would, it would only affect the actual rate at which, and I have some other concerns about that, but we should, if we're going to have a separate meeting, we should just save all that for a separate meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so
actually, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, I guess a show of hands, is that something that, well, Ray's raising 2 hands, so we'll count it twice. Anna, Andrew, Courtney. All right, looks like we got enough questions. So Sean, after this meeting is over with, if you've got a couple of minutes or tomorrow morning at some point, we could get together and look at our calendars and find out when would be good. Would you have any objection to doing it, say, on a Saturday afternoon, John? If that's easier for people to attend than, say, an evening.
Yeah, I might have something this Saturday that would not allow me to, but let me look at my schedule. And but yeah, Saturday afternoons are generally good for me.
We'll look at it. I know that there are some people that have challenges making these meetings in the evenings during the week. So since it's not something that's normally on our calendar, you might want to take a look at that.
Can I ask y'all, how would y'all feel? Because I don't know, it could be that we get 20 people from Highland Heights attending this meeting, and that would be fantastic. But how would y'all feel about me inviting other folks from the district to this meeting, or would you rather keep it a Highland Heights thing?
No, I'd be open to it. Courtney?
I'd be open, particularly because like even the tax cap, I hadn't heard really anything about that. And so my question was going to be like, should we submit like questions beforehand? Like, do you have any idea of what the format would be? And some of that is not because I'm like loaded with questions so much as I bet other people have really good questions that I would benefit from. And I don't want the meeting not to happen because I'm not like intelligent enough to have thought of somebody else's question before they did,
Yeah, I agree with Courtney. And sorry, my facilitator's coming out huge. I mean, that's what I do in my day-to-day. And if we were going to open it to more than just our neighborhood, I would like to give more notice, one, and also have someone facilitate, I could volunteer, but who could moderate the conversation to keep the conversation moving, and also to allow for the questions to be clear and specific, if that's something that people are open to. I'm not saying I'm just volunteering that information, because I know, sure, especially in a Zoom format, the loudest voice sometimes can take over.
Yeah, the thing is, anytime, as I'm looking back here and I have no idea how long Ashanti's been in the waiting room, I keep forgetting to look at that myself. Anyway, so yeah, it's always good to have a moderator or somebody else keeping an eye on things. while the meeting is actually going on. So Rachel, thank you. I'm sure we could tap that. And since I actually have for my business a paid Zoom account, so we can have up to 100 participants and we can go over an hour if need be. So Sean, I like that idea. I like the idea of, if there are others, maybe we have to ask them to sign up to make sure we don't go over our 100-person cap. But also submitting questions in advance. We might want to look at doing it a little over a week away so people have an opportunity to put their thoughts together and actually submit questions. And then that way we also can find out what are more common questions, and that way people aren't asking the same things.
So one other thought that I have is, do we want to open up it might be 2 years from now before what we would consider a normal capital improvements budget or capital spending plan is passed. But would we want to open it up to, concerns around capital spending, or which capital spending is like infrastructure improvements, like buildings and roadways and parks. It might be better to keep these conversations separate just because but I do want at some point to get, and I've talked with a few of you individually about this, but get more feedback about like the long-term capital priorities in the neighborhood in terms of like parks that need investment and, infrastructure, things like that.
I'll say, and maybe I'm not speaking for everyone, but from my perspective, it's a really complicated question, and those questions will come up, and I think that is going to be a thing that we want to push off to a different conversation. Property tax is confusing enough to start involving the double budget. I mean, I spent, work days discerning the budget and the conversations that were happening this year, and I'm a huge nerd for that stuff. But I still don't understand everything. So I would hope that we can make this a simple conversation just around property tax.
Okay.
I'm open to other people's input though.
Okay. So if anybody has any other ideas or feedback they want to give on that, feel free to just ping me on Facebook or give me a call, shoot me an email, anything of that nature. So not meaning to derail your time, Sean, I'll yield the floor back to you to carry on.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So let's see, big legislative items. The home-based businesses bill, Bill 2019-48, was before council on third reading. This bill was introduced like 7 months ago and I've been to Planning Commission twice for public hearing, I think. Or no, I think it had 2 public hearings at council. And, this was a really tough one for me. So what this bill does is it allows some limited, commercial, like low impact commercial activity, home offices, things like that to take place in residents' homes. I was immediately very concerned about sort of opening up the floodgates to another Airbnb type situation with this legislation. So I was able to get my amendment in there helps ensure that these permits only go to primary residents of the home where the activity will take place. So what I was concerned about was, say, if I live out in Brentwood and I want to, buy up an East Nashville house in a hip neighborhood and turn it into like a commercial studio, while that, if my neighbor who lives in the home wants to do that, then, that's one thing in my book. But if people from outside the neighborhood are buying up homes to convert them into businesses, that starts to further deteriorate the fabric of the neighborhood, kind of in the way that the commercial Airbnb activity has. And so I wanted to make sure that, and I think we got some strong protections. It's, you have to provide documents proving it's your residency. You have to sign an affidavit. So, you're actually, if you submit a false affidavit to the city, I mean, that's punishable under Tennessee code. Whereas kind of with the Airbnb stuff, it's like, people just kind of say they live there and they don't. And there's not really anything we can do about it because there's just no teeth to it. So I think that we put some teeth in there with that amendment. We also put a sunset provision in there. So March of 2023, and this was initially Councilmember Henderson's idea, so I thank her for her work on this. It goes away. If we don't take action, this whole thing goes away. So if it's a disaster, we've got an out. If it's great, we might need to tweak it. We can tweak it. So I think that's good. And then the third thing that I thought was we made it so it's a yearly permit. So it's not like a entitlement that you get and have in perpetuity. It's something that you have to return to codes and say, hey, I want to continue, having people drop off tax documents at my house or teaching piano lessons at my house. And we think that also just kind of hedged us a little bit against this becoming kind of a runaway train like Airbnb in 2014 did. That's probably the biggest, most impactful thing that's happened since the budget vote on the council side. Does anybody have questions about specific developments in the community or legislation that's coming up that you would like to talk about?
I guess I would just ask, is there anything that is coming up in the next couple months that you have your eye on?
Nothing big on third reading. There was kind of around the budget cycle and with COVID sort of, we kept putting off like big pieces of legislation for, just kind of indefinitely. Like we had a pretty substantial overhaul of, that's the other thing that passed at the last meeting, a pretty substantial overhaul of Airbnb rules. Not really changing much, but more codifying it. We moved it from Title 17, which is zoning, into Title 6, which is property standards. And this bill really was written by codes to kind of help them better be able to enforce some of the rules that are on the books. That bill also created a new review body for short-term rental issues and disputes. So currently those are heard at the Board of Zoning Appeals. They will be handled by this new 7-member board to be established. And there will be a council representative on that board, and I'm considering lobbying to get my colleagues to select me for that board. We'll see who else is interested in throwing their hat in the ring there. But, I've spent so much time over the years, looking at Airbnb rules and the different iterations, and I can kind of take a glance at a permit date and kind of know what rules are around it at this point, because there's so many different iterations of the rules that you have to know. So I think I'd be a good candidate for that, and I'm looking forward to it, to trying that. But I'm sorry, I think I might have veered off course from your question, Ben.
No, that's all right. The question was just like, was there anything you see on the docket coming, maybe before our next meeting or before September that's going to be heard that we'd want to be watching for? That was all.
Are you speaking specifically, Ben, about developments and such?
Yeah, I mean, anything on council that's up for a hearing, like, on a second or third reading.
There's a very controversial R6 rezoning at 118 Lucille Street.
Yes. Oh yeah. Wow.
A long line of angry neighbors for. So.
Yeah, it'll probably never happen. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. Ben's yurting for attention.
Yeah. Good one.
There's one bill that I'm kind of very interested in understanding the implications of better. It's from the administration. So it's a bill that would basically make violation of any mayoral executive order. I'm not sure the exact parameters, but it would make it a misdemeanor, I believe a Class C misdemeanor. And I definitely need to better understand that, because not necessarily looking at the situations that we've had, this year in Nashville and the executive orders we've had this year, but trying to think forward to what could be around the corner, what administrations could be around the corner, and sort of what it means to sort of give that power to basically, by executive order, declare things to be misdemeanors that otherwise wouldn't. So I'm looking forward to having some questions answered about that. But that's like I think that's the only one that I'm really digging.
Nothing development wise. advised that any kind
Not
of
in this neighborhood.
Okay.
The McFerrin people, the McFerrin Park folks there's a big proposal to build, if y'all know the old Foster Street warehouse site, the pedestrian bridge crosses over it in McFerrin Park, the pedestrian bridge that goes over Ellington. There's a group that wants to do like a mixed use development there with a bunch of housing and some hotel units and then some commercial space. And, you know, they've got kind of an interesting thing. There's not a lot of, I would say, opposition to that big project in the community. People are very concerned about the traffic implications, it seems. And so that's mostly what I've been focusing on, is seeing if there's anything that we can condition that on that would sort of help address the traffic concerns. And so that's been interesting because we're kind of setting precedent, at least in developments that I've followed closely, with, you know, really asking a lot of this development group. And we'll see if it's enough for the folks in the community to support it. And that's just an interesting one to follow along if y'all are interested in development in this whole area, but it is not Highland Heights.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry. I just had two quick things. One was development related and one was traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The development one, I saw that they tore down like a single family home on like North 5th and Douglas. It's like just into Cleveland Park. And I was wondering if there was any plans out there, or do you know I don't know, it's not really facing Douglas, but I assume it might have been treated like it was on Douglas.
Is that the one where people were posting on Facebook about them not getting a demo permit and knocking it down?
Oh, I didn't see anything about that.
Okay, somebody was asking on Cleveland Park about, do they even have a demo permit? They couldn't find one in e-permits. People try to stretch the grandfathering for like duplex building. People try really hard to do that sometimes, and sometimes they've been successful. This is like the various ways that people try to build tall and skinnies on a single family lot without actually getting the zoning that supports it. A lot of the times they just won't even ask me, or they ask me and I say, nah, probably not. And then they just go to the zoning administrator or someone else and say, like, what I've seen people doing lately is they'll go to the Register of Deeds and just file an HPR with a horizontal property regime, like with a site plan attached to it. But then it's like, the zoning isn't there. There's no grandfathering because there was no duplex ever there, but yet they're like trying to pursue it this weird way. And I don't know if it's something, I don't think they can get there under current state law, but you never know what they're going to do on Capitol Hill for us to make our lives easier.
You're not seeing any of those like successfully sneak through though, right? Like if nobody notices it. Some
Properties are genuinely eligible for grandfathered status as duplexes. And sometimes I think where people are getting, like there was one in Maxwell Heights that was this case, and I don't know, but I think what it was is it was a single family home that was converted into an AB duplex. And so it was on file with the city as being a duplex, even though it was built like a single family home. And so when they knocked that down, they were able to build two, not because they had the zoning, but just because they were grandfathered under like the land use designation there. I don't know.
Courtney, I think the property that you're talking about is listed in Development Tracker as 500 Douglas Avenue. It's right next to those new condos that were built about 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's across
the ones that were painted white.
Oh yeah, no, that guy.
I think that's part of his existing property area, but I think it's deeded separately for some reason. It's kind of weird because it doesn't show as a separate property on Parcel Viewer, but on Development Tracker it does.
So I
think he's only looking to rezone from RS5 to R6 and remove the SP.
Yeah, and that's one. I don't think that's been to Planning Commission yet.
No, August 27th is the date that I'm seeing.
Because he asked me about that months ago. Brian something, I think is his name. And I just looked it up and I said, well, you don't have the square footage to get R6 there. So I don't know if he got an exemption or something, because the lot wasn't big enough for R6.
It still has, since it's yet to go to planning, I don't know if there's been an official, I mean, he's still requesting the R6. He may get shot down. I think it's only 0.12 acres, so it very well could not, I mean, it may very well not go anywhere. But that's the property I think you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would need like a 5% variance. It's not a huge variance, but it is a small lot. Because I remember looking at that house when it was for sale, and I was like, wow, this is, you know, room to park a car behind this house, and that's about it.
So, what was I going to say? Oh, well, anyway, anything else going on in the neighborhood? I'm not really familiar with, there have been a couple of places in the neighborhood that have new and pending zoning applications just changing from RS5 to R6, but every single one of them, or R6A, that I've seen have been well within the neighborhood study and the supplemental policies that we have. So nothing is outlandish or outrageous at this particular point that I've seen. Just to kind of put that out there.
You know, my feeling about higher density projects in Highland Heights right now, I mean, if you're on Dickerson, that's kind of another story, but like within the neighborhood, my predecessor and passed so many that are like now starting, like, I think we need to kind of let some of these things come to fruition before we go packing more in to see how the infrastructure supports it and how the neighborhood changes with sort of the projects that are already approved.
No objection from me.
That's, you know, that's not to say that I'm just like closing the book on any conversations about any of this stuff, but it's just, there's so much in the pipeline that we haven't seen square one of that. I just think we need to kind of get an idea for how these things are actually going to work.
Sean, that's a question that I have. That big bill that's going up on Lishy right now, I think it's behind somebody's house. Nadine, is it you? No, Nadine doesn't live.
Yeah,
it's next door.
It's Nadine's.
Okay.
It's the old trailer park.
But, you know, yeah, I'm sorry they did that to you. But there's other stuff that I've been talking about for a couple years, and it's coming to fruition right now. Lishy's becoming a drag strip. We need that light at the corner, you know, down on Trinity and Lishy, to start regulating it, to start people starting to get used to it before they build all those houses, which is going to pour all of that stuff on there. And I know it takes quite a while to get, you know, even a street light up. So I'm wondering what you suggest that we do as neighbors to start getting that infrastructure built now to try to accommodate that rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just having those conversations, and I mean, I can have those, just keeping it on Public Works radar, I think is important. I think I would have a really hard time convincing them to build a light when the traffic flow didn't support it right now, just because I think it's always hard to get them to put a light in because they're really expensive. But there's just, we have such limited monetary constraints as a city right now. But I do think that just continuing to have that at the front of our minds as something to push for is helpful. So yeah, absolutely. One thing that, you know, a lot of neighborhoods want traffic calming infrastructure. You know, the speed humps, other things. And there's kind of some little tricks that we can do to make our applications stronger when we apply for that program, which it's actually open right now. I don't know if Highland Heights has an active, I know that like the Rose Bank area had a traffic calming application that was actually accepted maybe a year or two ago. But I don't know if like anybody's done one for Lishy, Meridian.
It's complicated on Lishy because we have commercial semi-traffic 4 times a day coming from the greenhouse, you know, but it's, you know, all that traffic that's going to be in those housing, all those cars are going to be in that housing up there, are going to dump down on Meridian, they're going to dump down on Lishy to try to get downtown or wherever they go. And Lishy now, the weight and the rate that people are traveling down there, we're backing up sometimes 8, 9, 10 cars.
So I'm just
waiting to
curious,
get out.
one of the things that I mentioned to you, Sean, back when you were still a candidate, addressed things like Lishi specifically because there is no stop sign between Lishi and Trinity and Lishi and Douglas. Would that, Ray, what do you think about looking at a couple of intersections to put either three-way stops or four-way stops, depending on where they are, just to force people to stop at different points along
I'm for
the road?
anything that will stop the drag race, for one. And
Sean, would that be something
accommodate the volume of cars going to come out of those developments?
Yeah,
So-
I think Walk Bike Nashville would be interested in that too, because I know you have to cross Lishi from the bus stop to get into our neighborhood, and we've had to play that game of Frogger a couple of times.
Yeah, it's a major issue on Lishi. I was gonna say, I think Cleveland Park, it looked like they had been like granted their like second like time around like traffic slowing measures, and so I am interested in the tips for like the application process.
So here's how Cleveland Park got it. The way that they score the traffic calming applications, they score it based on the degree of offense. So if they see that everybody's going 50 miles an hour in a 30-mile zone in Highland Heights, and then everybody's going 50 miles an hour in a 20-mile zone in Cleveland Park scores higher because they have a lower limit. Even though you're both dealing with 50-mile-an-hour traffic in a residential area, the deviation from the speed limit is higher because it's 20 down there. So one thing that I did for the folks down on Seymour in Greenwood, they have crazy issues every morning, people speeding to that Burger King and back. I asked for that to be expedited down to I actually asked for 20 miles an hour, but they just expedited the 25 lowering, which is going to be happening all across the city in the near future. But what that's going to allow is their application, if somebody's going 50, it's going to be scored against 25 rather than 50 now.
Yeah, I would say, like, while I support the traffic calming measures over there, and I say good for them, I believe that the traffic calming measures over there have actually increased the problem over here. And so if there's some way to comment on the fact that a study area of that size actually negatively impacts the people around, because as soon as they get out of there, I feel like there's more incentive then to drag race. Like, I've never seen so much. And that's, I definitely mirror like the concerns of the increase in traffic that are yet to come from these big developments. So I don't know that I personally want speed humps, but some stop signs and things like that can be on the radar, or there's a way we can get people together to something like that, because of, I think that's sort of this ripple effect.
So there's two ways that I know to get stop signs, and that is I just call Public Works, and this worked at a spot in Maxwell Heights a few months back. I just call Public Works and say, hey, this intersection's unsafe. I think we should look at doing a four-way here. They come look at it. If the engineer agrees with me that it's unsafe, they'll just mark it and the sign will come up, and we don't have to do petitions. We don't have to do anything else. The other thing we can do is petition the Traffic and Parking Commission to get it done. And I haven't done one that way, but the conversations I've had with my colleagues is that it is doable.
And it's a lot easier than getting stoplights put in.
It's way cheaper than stoplights. It's even cheaper than, just in terms of like, that's like routine stuff that Public Works has, they've got tons of paint, tons of stop signs. Whereas like the traffic calming stuff, they have to special order. They're like $1,500 per unit, and like a stretch of traffic calming might be 9 to 15 units. So it gets very expensive very quickly. Whereas the stop signs, the thing about stop signs that we keep in mind is that they won't use them as traffic calming devices. If you say, hey, we want to calm traffic here, so we want a stop sign, that is not an appeal that the engineers at Public Works will listen to. Traffic and Parking Commission might, but the engineers at Public Works want to see a blind spot. They want to see a grade that makes sightlines inadequate for that intersection, that's the kind of thing where they'll come out and say, oh, this is unsafe. We're going to plop a 4-way down with like no fuss.
Well,
So-
while I agree with slowing the traffic down there, I still want to reiterate that the problem is going to be in the future on Lishi and Trinity to get out, period.
Yeah.
Because it's 3-way. The greenhouse or the water place is across the street, so that's not an access street. You're not going forward. Yeah. And without a street light there, coming in off of Dickerson and also zooming down to downtown is just going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, we've already got it on Oakwood with the new multi-100 unit building that opened up. You know, getting off of Oakwood in the morning now. You know, I drive a stick shift and there's a pretty steep hill right there, and you know, I have to ride my parking brake to get through a line of 9 cars that is just trying to make a left turn, and it's a huge mess. And that's probably, I mean, you're going to see similar patterns on Trinity if there's not a light. So I agree completely.
Well, and you did talk about some improvements to Trinity in the future, correct? And so is that something that will be part of that? Because I imagine, there's already traffic waiting to merge onto Trinity.
That's specifically a paving project where we're getting funds matched, well, not matched 9-to-1 from the state. Because Trinity connects 65 and Ellington and Gallatin, which are all state routes. Normally, because Trinity is it's a city route, so normally we would be responsible for upkeep. But because of that connectivity between state routes, the state is going to pay for most of the repaving of Trinity. But it's only paving. That particular thing is only paving. There is a separate planned expenditure which is going to improve the crosswalks at Dickerson and Trinity. But that would not include, the stoplight is going to be a separate conversation and a separate line item somewhere. And also all of these things are not moving as quickly as anyone would like right now because of funding issues at the state and local level.
In terms of
it is something that we're looking at. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go right ahead.
You mentioned traffic and parking, and I know Nora Kern, who's on Walk Bike Nashville staff, I think she leads the staff actually there, is on that commission. I wonder if it might be helpful have her come to a meeting and talk to us about what's worked in other neighborhoods, because I know they've done a lot of work across the city to put in things to help pedestrians crossing safely, and I know speed is a factor in that. So if you would be interested in me reaching out to Walk Bike, I'd be happy to. I have a friend who works there.
Yeah, I think if Stacy would like to have Nora on the agenda at a meeting, I think that would be fantastic.
I'm always willing to put people on the agenda. They just need to let me know when they'd like to come, and I'll work them in if at all possible. If I don't have an overwhelming agenda already. But so speaking of agenda, we've been in this meeting about an hour. I do try to keep them to an hour, but we still have stuff to discuss. Did anybody else have any other real quick question or comment for Sean? If so, just pipe on up, or raise your hand, or let it be known.
Well, thank y'all. Stacy, is there anything that you'd like me to stick around for? I've got another meeting at 7:30 that I need to do a few minutes of prep for.
I don't have anything on the agenda that would necessarily address anything that you would have any influence or feedback on. So if you do have to run, that's fine with me. I mean, you're always welcome to stay if you'd like, but can understand.
I might just keep the audio going just in case anybody shouts me out for a few minutes, because I just need to review a couple of documents, but I'll kind of have y'all on.
Eavesdropper, you.
But thank y'all so much for having me here and chatting with me.
Thanks, Sean. And just so everybody knows, Sean is very responsive. If you do have something you want to email him about, please use his Metro government email address. But he is on our Facebook page, and he does engage with our community much more than just this once a month Zoom meeting. So we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you so much for saying that. And just when things get said on Facebook, it's hard for me to track that. because Facebook doesn't give me like a linear feed of like posts where I'm tagged. Like I don't know where to find that if it exists. If you email me, I can pin it. I can put it in my folder of constituent emails, and I know where to find it anytime. So please do email me. I'm happy to chat on Facebook, but I can't always find those messages when I need them. So thank you.
So if it's a serious concern, email him. If you're just wanting to say, hey, Sean, want to go grab a beer, Facebook is okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, we got a few things to discuss yet, and just wanted to pop through a few of them. Some of these may necessarily have a little more discussion to them. Don't feel like you are obligated to stay if you do need to move on to another meeting or something, but I'll try to make these pretty quick and easy. I have started posting minutes and I believe treasury reports to Facebook. So on the files section of the Highland Heights Neighbors Facebook page, you will find some files in there. So as we go forward, and I'm looking at going back into the past as well and posting some of those files there, please feel free to reference that if you'd like. And I will promise to do a better job of posting those in advance of 1 hour before our meeting. So with that being said, Treasury report, we still stand at $1,639 in our account. We have had no income or expenditures in the last 30 days, much less in the last 90 days. So we're sitting pretty stable there at this particular point. Don Tangren is not here to discuss the garden, but it does exist if you guys want to go down and visit it. It's down behind Abstract Concrete off of Meridian and Douglas. That's right. Yeah, Meridian and Douglas. It's in an open lot. If you do go by, I would recommend that you stick your head in Abstract Concrete, say hi to Santana, let him know that you're going to be walking around the garden so he's not surprised, just in case you wanted to go visit it. Zoning, we talked about some of the parcels that are up for rezoning. Like I said, there's nothing really out of the ordinary. RS5 to R6A in the areas that support it. I think there's only like 3 of those right now that are pending. I will say that with the water tower project, which now has been renamed to Trinity Apartments or something like, I don't know what it is specifically, but their final site plan, I have some questions about. Looks like they are getting ready to start working on that pretty soon. I have some questions that I have sent to planning and have yet to hear back because I only emailed them yesterday. So I'll bring an update, post it on Facebook or whatever when we're closer to that. Did anybody have any questions about any specific developments or homes for sale or anything of that nature that you may have seen in the neighborhood? It's been really quiet. And aside from the trailer park project at 1801 Meridian,
I was just about to say it's not been
yeah.
quiet over here.
No, it's not quiet there, but as far as just the churn, we have nothing like what we had 2 years ago, thank goodness. So did anybody have any specific questions about any developments or properties? As I've got my parcel viewer and my development tracker open on my other computer, I can certainly look at.
We got a couple of demolishes in the neighborhood. The one on Gatewood and Meridian, that house was demolished and it's still a lot. And they just tore down the one on Trinity and Lishy on the gray house across. It's across from the gas station. Yeah.
From where? I'm sorry.
It's on Trinity and Lishy, and it's the house that was on the, what would that be, the southeast corner? It's gone. There's a hole there now, and I didn't know if anybody
was that the Denny's property?
I don't know what it was. It was a
no, not the Denny's.
family home.
This one was across from the community kind of like market, like gas station. Last time we spoke about it, if I recall correctly, the property owner wanted to put 2 onto it with 2 separate drives. One maybe that was connecting to Trinity, one to Lishy. There was some issue with setback because of those wanting to put 2.
I don't know. The house is just, it's gone now. I just wondered if there was anything, that any permits had been filed for it. I can't know what the address is, but the address would be on Trinity.
I remember something about this, but I'm sorry that I don't have a clear recollection of it. But
Okay.
that's what I remember, is that they ran it, they will be building on it. I don't know if the plan's been approved, but I thought it was a single family home. I think they were planning to build another single family home, but with maybe the addition. Stacy, are you remembering?
Is this, well, I'm looking at the maps now. Is this the parcel that is literally on the corner of
Yeah.
Trinity and Lishi, that's across the street from where the gardening supply place used to be, and adjacent to Community Market? The
Yes.
address looks like it's 1905B Lishi, or 1905 Lishi is one of the addresses. And then there's also,
Yeah, that's it.
it's weird. Is that the one?
Yep.
I wouldn't think it would be a Lishi address.
Well, it's kind of odd the way
It had a front
looking
door
here.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now that parcel, if I'm looking at it correctly, was rezoned RM15 in 2014. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but it looks like they've got the ability to do a little denser development because of its existing entitlements.
Well, I was interested in going down Trinity towards Ellington. There's probably on both sides of the street about 4 houses that are empty now. And there were families that were in them. So my feeling was people are buying those up, hanging on to them until they can get adjacent properties, trying to get people to get out, because that's all the part that we approve for high density development and stuff.
And that is a good point, Ray, that could be the case. I'm not aware, and I really can't see any sale transactions unless I'm looking at an actual property. It does look like, if this is the property that we're all talking about, it does appear that it changed hands in March. So
Well, it'd been empty for quite a while, and you know, there was an older family that lived there originally when we moved here, and then it's been empty for a while, and then I drove by and it's gone. So just the lot is there.
Now I do recall speaking to a guy, and this may have been the one that had purchased it a few months ago, that he had intentions of tearing that house down and then rebuilding a new dwelling, and according to him, he was going to reside there. Now that may have changed, I don't know, but like I said, with its current zoning, they could potentially build an extra unit. I'd have to look at the actual parcel acreage to find out what the because it's only a 21 foot by 170 foot lot. So
yeah, it's not a big lot.
It's barely 2/10 of an acre. So there's not much that he could put in there if that were the case. But unfortunately, there's no rezoning request for it, and there's no, there was a demo permit that was issued in May. That's the most recent thing on the permit history. So that's all I've got on that one. Did anybody else have any other questions on specific properties?
Yeah.
I may or may not know the answer, but we'll see.
Do you know why the Denny's lot is still sitting there with nothing done to it?
So from my understanding, it was to be rezoned, and he had a buyer for that lot. Let's see if I can find which lot we were actually talking about here. From my understanding was that that particular lot, he had a buyer for, and they were going to do something with it. They initially wanted much denser zoning than they were eventually awarded. But as far as, I'm trying to find out when it happened. So it looks like it was purchased from the Denny's in November. As far as I know, there's not been any movement on the lot. So maybe another one of those things where the person is waiting for other lots to come available. But he was paid for the lot, so it's not in his name anymore. That's all I know at this point. There's not been anything filed for construction, and it looks like the only thing on here is, well, I don't even see a demo permit at this point, but it just may not have been loaded yet.
Okay.
I know that's not incredibly helpful, but
All right.
that's all I can see
When
at this
something gets
particular point.
built, that they're gonna, we're gonna have a view of that. It's nice that there's nothing there now, I guess. But so Public Works and our fence situation, do you guys remember us talking about that last week or last month?
Yes, ma'am. Did you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
So it turns out that the builder, he's actually a really nice guy, and he has been working with us. He doesn't need that alley at all. He's got all his code requirements met. And apparently he's not the one that got the SP. He was not involved in the original SP approval that happened 3 years ago. So when he bought the property, or I don't know how or when he got involved, but he apparently proposed a new SP to Public Works that did not have the alley in there, and they denied it. So that's not great news for us. However, I think we are going to go forward in seeking legal counsel to find out what our rights are, and maybe bring this against them. Basically, nobody needs the alley. None of the neighbors want it. Most of the neighbors are all new neighbors, so they were not involved in the SP process and getting all that finalized. We don't recall ever being notified that there were hearings about that lot. So all this stuff might be brought forth in court if we decide to take it that far. But, you know, it's basically, we were kind of told it would be too much paperwork to change it now, and that moving our fences and moving our sheds might be the best option.
Yeah, so just out of curiosity, I'm sure they had a survey done. Where is the actual property line? Your property line, that is.
So when I wouldn't be so sure of that they had a survey done. When the original SP was made 3 years ago, I do not believe a survey was done.
Well, they would have had to have done a survey prior to construction, because they have to know where to do their connections to the city, like via water and drainage, sewage and things of that nature. So they have to have a property survey. So I guess my question is, have you seen that survey?
We have. My thing is I don't think that when they had the SP made, though, I kind of heard that there wasn't an accurate or an adequate survey that was done. I don't know how they would have gotten away from that. I know before construction, yes, because you have to know where everything's buried and how to connect to it.
Right. The thing is, and maybe we can discuss this individually and not necessarily here in this public arena, but there always has been, as far back as I know, an alley on the actual plots. So when their property is surveyed, if you know where their northeastern corner is, measure 20 feet from that, and that's your property line. So that's why I was curious if that should be a quick and easy answer as to whether or not they measured correctly to begin with. Is if they've got a survey, then you know where their northeastern corner is.
I mean, surveys are done on both sides, and the alley's there. We're not disputing that, but what we're disputing is, why would Public Works force the alley if nobody wants it, nobody needs it, it's not for codes?
You want the quick and easy answer?
Sure.
The one you're not going to like is because that's going to allow the city to get something for free, and that's the construction of an alley. And that's the short and skinny answer. The city doesn't have to pay for it. They get improved infrastructure. The developer that originally submitted the SP that became the overlaying zoning for that particular property, they had to have an alley built. So the city gets the alley for free. And unless you can beg an abandonment, which you have to have a vast majority of your neighbors along that alley property, which I think there's probably 18 or 19 plus the trailer park project. A vast majority of those would have to agree that they want to abandon the alley. Then you might have an argument, and even then it may still not be successful. So just kind of letting you know the way that goes.
I was going to say, in that vein, though, if you do feel like you've talked to your neighbors and they are not in support of it, particularly the homes directly next to you on Edwin there, I would try to get a collection of letters from those individuals, like specifically have them write in. Because I think, like Stacy said, like when the city can get something for free and it can like be under the connectivity, which is always what the city hangs onto these lands for, I think it's going to be a really difficult, I think it's going to be difficult to get the city to budge on it. But I think that would be my advice, is get those Edwin neighbors specifically, you know?
Yeah, the ones that touch
Nothing would be more compelling than
that. The fact of the matter is the city has abandoned unimproved alleys and such in other parts of the city, but they're not going to do it unless there's enough question raised. And technically, the only two outs that you really have at this point is a civil dispute with the city on where the actual property lines go and where they are, and then there's the argument for abandonment. That's the only two options that I'm aware of at this point. Civil, or it's trying to convince the city to abandon it.
Okay, well, that's depressing.
I know. As I discussed with Lee the other night, I'm in a situation where my backyard technically borders Marshall Street as an unimproved actual street, a 50-foot wide actual street. It's never been developed. As long as the Optimara nursery has been there, which is well over 100 plus years. I don't remember when it was officially established, but that facility has been there way longer than I have been. But with the addition of Marshall Crossings, if that development ever happens and the city requires them to build a 200-foot section of Marshall Street, then I have no choice. I have to take, steps to make sure that my backyard doesn't become a front yard. And the only way I can do that is dealing with trying to get it abandoned before that property gets developed that borders Lishi. So I completely understand the situation that you're in. I was really shocked to learn that I have a similar situation in my backyard. I learned that a few years back.
Yeah, unfortunately, this isn't uncommon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with where I am, but I'm at 1303. So it would seem that I'm like the second house in on a block, but I'm much further over from Douglas. And the reason is what appears to be almost be like a cut through alley by my house is called like Mile End, and it used to be essentially Douglas. And so it's sort of like an old roadway. And so I am having some neighbors who are dealing with land that belongs to the city. It's not really doesn't make sense for connectivity, but they deal with a lot of people who are almost like trespassing through the property, even though they're not technically trespassing, because it's kind of in a sense like no man's land. It's just this strange little gulf of land. So I'm sure they'll be having like these same conversations and trying to pursue some abandonment, but it's a hard fight. But I'm sorry if it's bad news, but just know that we empathize, and like these challenges are challenging in the neighborhood. We've seen a lot of that with the development, and I can't remember or speak to the notice aspect. I'm trying to remember. I think this SP, it was like 3 years ago, right? But we did
I believe it was approved in 2017.
Notices, but I can't remember at what time. Do you remember the year where notices were waived? But it wasn't for an SP. It was like a greater.
It was the neighborhood policy change was the only one that was waived. Let's see if
How
I
can we
can
look up the notices that went out, or how can we look up the, if there were notices that were sent?
I think planning is the one that keeps those records. Let's see, I'm looking to see when the SP was approved.
It was 2000.
The thing, yeah, the thing about the SP is it then becomes the zoning law for that property. So anybody that purchases the property, they have to fulfill the requirements of the SP. Otherwise, they have to file a whole new zoning request. If he were to, like you were saying, if he were to submit another plan that did not basically mirror the SP that was already approved, then he would be denied. He would have to file a whole new plan and go through the whole rezoning process to get the other SP approved. And that's just the way those work. Yeah, it was effective October 27th of 2017. So it would have been that previous summer, so May, June, possibly, when those notices went out, but it depends on how quickly or how fast it moved through the planning process, because they have, you have one public hearing before planning, and if it's passed at planning, then it goes before council. You have first meeting, second meeting, which is the public meeting, and I don't think there are any notices for council. There might be, but planning's the notices that usually go out.
Stacy, Diane, as she patrols the real estate in this area and stuff, has noticed that a good number of, besides the people that are just calling randomly and sending mail for us to sell our house, they're also advertising in places that are available that they're Airbnb ready. They come with permits or permittable. And I was wondering if, so these are already built units that they're set, because a lot of people are bailing on their Airbnbs here because of the coronavirus, And so those properties are being advertised now for sale as coming with an Airbnb. And I'm wondering, is the permit following the house, or did we take care of that? That once it was sold, the permit disappeared and it had to be reapplied?
Yes, the permit is only for the owner. It's not for the property. So
that's
if
what
there's
I'm
a change
saying.
in ownership, then the new owner would have to file for a whole new property. If we're just talking about generalities as far as developments go, if you have a property that you buy as an investment property and you apply for a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit, you have to, I think it was either early this year or it's possibly early next year, you have to state your intention so that they can reserve you the opportunity to file a permit request.
Well, I think this is going to be coming down because there's a very aggressive seller here in this area that's doing that.
Is there a specific property or a specific area that
I'd have to ask Diane. She was looking at one of the properties that was available, and it's already there. It had an Airbnb. It was an Airbnb, but now they're just trying to sell it as a home, but they're saying it'll come as an Airbnb, so invest in this property.
If it's in an RM district, multifamily residential district, I don't believe they can do that. If it's an SP, probably not. I'd have to look at the specific property to.
Well, I'll ask her to see. I'll ask her to look it up then. All right.
Okay.
I had a few questions. It's cool.
Andrew, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
Cool. So I'm new, so I know like a lot of stuff happened in the past, but I'm just trying to find it out. So like I found Parcel Viewer and I've been looking at it, and I'm seeing things like the corner of Meridian and Marshall being RM20A. So is that accurate? What's the deal with that? Was that something that happened in the past, or is Parcel Viewer wrong?
The Parcel Viewer is correct. If I think the property you're looking at is at 1519 Meridian, in the next door property
building. Yeah.
Yeah. So those were parcels that were rezoned not too long ago. Let me look right quick. Yeah, they were rezoned in late summer of last year. So that particular intersection is considered a higher traffic intersection. And there
For
are
sure.
a few of these in the neighborhood that would support slightly larger density than surrounding areas. That particular corner was one that was identified as one that could support it. And in the study that we did that was approved in 2018, I don't have a copy that's sitting here in front of me, but I can send you the link if you want.
I've looked
Even
through it
if you
before.
do,
It's pretty
you
cool.
have. So that particular corner was identified as one that could support a little extra density. So it was rezoned, and apparently if this is the one I'm thinking of, they were going to put 4, maybe 5 houses on that whole corner area between the alley and Marshall Street.
Awesome.
It was not a huge, hugely denser project, but because of the RM20, that's the zoning that they could put in, and I think that will allow them 4 to 5 units. I'm trying to remember what the plan looked like, because the developer had just a real rough drawing of what he was anticipating. Now, the important thing to remember is that there's no beholden him to that particular plan. He still has to follow the guidelines of the policy that was identified after the neighborhood study. So it's not like he could put up a 6-story apartment building.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, because I saw the 20.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's a max of 20 units an acre. And considering that one of these properties is barely 2/10 of an acre, and the other one, oh, come on.
They're not very big.
So about a half acre. So the absolute most that could go there would be 10. But that would, he'd also have to account for the drive, the common parking areas, things of that nature. So you're probably looking at a smaller density than 10 units.
Okay.
But that would be the max. And he could build up to that, but then he has to also follow the rules of that particular zoning district as far as setbacks and everything. So it's not like you can cram everything in there.
Yeah.
If that makes
And
sense.
my second question was actually related to that same sort of area. Just because
Okay.
you guys have like set up plans for sort of like what the neighborhood should look like in certain areas. The corner of Pullen and Meridian is like an industrial building. So, I mean, is that something that's just been there for eons and
Yeah.
one day it goes away?
It's there. That building has been there. You're talking about at the other corner of that block,
Yeah, 'cause
correct?
that's
Across
my
the alley. Yeah, that actually used to be a marzipan factory. Oddly enough, that's what they used to do there, was marzipan, which was crazy to think that was there. But that particular property, if I'm not mistaken, it is currently RS5. In 1974, it was zoned as R6. So that building and that usage has been there well before 1974.
Okay.
So if that building is ever demoed and somebody purchases the property, they want to demo it and then rebuild there, unless they apply for a new zoning and go through that application process, right now they're restricted to RS5, which is a single family dwelling.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay. Courtney, what you had I thought I heard you
I was
had a
curious
question.
about that first address that Andrew mentioned.
It's 1519 and 1523 Meridian. So it's between the alley and Marshall on Meridian. That's the properties that what was his name? Dwayne?
Okay.
What's his name? Remember Dwayne? Cuthbertson. Yeah. That and William. I think he and William were involved in that at some point, but then I think William either backed out of the deal or he has something else that he was working on. But that's and just so you know, Andrew, that we have had, prior to the neighborhood study going into place, we had several very interesting and sometimes very pointed discussions with developers on what they can and cannot do in our neighborhood. And
well, that's sort of the history that I figured out, because I posted once about them like tearing out, Lichfield and Meridian. It was like, there's a story. So
yes, a very big story. And sometime we can get together at East Nashville Beer Works, have a couple of brews, and we'll
yeah,
go
and talk
through it.
about what on earth
Yeah,
they're doing.
when we don't have to wear masks and we can actually
Yeah.
relax.
Has there been any news on the club down on Lishy? Anything with that property?
So a month or so ago, Sean was contacted again by the owner, who is wanting him to back the rezoning so that he could do mixed use. Sean pretty much told him, I don't think so. It doesn't fit the neighborhood plan. It's not something that the neighbors are interested in doing. The guy said that he, liked to talk to the neighborhood, but then never contacted me about coming to a neighborhood meeting. And that's the last I heard of it. I haven't heard anything else. So he's pretty much been told that he's limited to RS5. And that's the only thing that the sub-district would allow him to do, unless he wanted to do an SP. If he could do an SP, he could do that and put a few extra units in there, but it would have to be something that would be comparable in density to surrounding structures. So he couldn't do a 10-story, 40-unit, building there, which is not what he was wanting to do. I'm just saying he would have, he's pretty restricted in what he can do with that property. But from what I understand, he wants to just rezone it so that he can try to sell it at a higher price. But it ain't gonna happen.
We do have an interesting planning history. I mean, the area is filled with really cool history too. There's like a Facebook page that I'm happy to share with you that's just like, you can geek out on some history over here. It's very cool. But in terms of like planning and development, I just wanted to give Stacy a little shout out. He just set us up a YouTube channel where these videos will be like kind of posted so people can watch them following. But in addition to that, we've discussed putting up some of the relevant recordings of council meetings. Oh, so am I jumping ahead? I'm so, yeah, I can just stop.
No. I was gonna say that's actually the next thing on the agenda. So you haven't seen it and you can't really read it now, but the YouTube channel is going to be coming up soon.
Well, so
Go ahead.
Way was one, the joke about our notorious council people made me laugh because as part of the YouTube channel, Stacy has discussed, or the steering committee has discussed, like adding a section that has a lot of the relevant planning meetings and council meetings that might help fill in the gaps of the adventures that we have been through in the recent years and are very informative. Sometimes they're not, tantalizing or anything. They're definitely government meetings, but they're good insight into what's been going on in this community.
I think one of the most infamous ones was where our former council member stood up in a council meeting arguing for some sort of approval for Keisha's ballroom, claiming that it was a deli that a lot of the older people in the neighborhood like to go have lunch at, when everyone in this neighborhood knew that it was a late night after hours club that had constant, if there was an old person in there, it's because they got lost. And it definitely was not a deli. So just there's a lot of background just in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I know because I know on my street, like, I'm assuming I walked by one of your houses today because I saw the sign reminding me of the meeting. I was like, oh yeah. I just,
Courtney?
For real, like, there's got to be 6 new people on just my block since I've moved in like February. I mean, so there's been a lot of turnover, and I don't know if they know about the meetings and things like that.
Well, go say hi to them.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I already know them. It's just like,
okay. Well, invite them the next time.
So,
I do a lot of greeting of folks. Courtney and I do, and probably we do 10 a month or something at least. Oh, with these little
refrigerator magnets that tell people where our Facebook page is, and our email address and our website. So, yeah, if you happen to meet these folks and talk to them, one of the challenges we always have is trying to reach the new people that moved into the neighborhood, whether they're renters or whether they're residents that just bought the house. We want to engage as many people as we possibly can, and that's actually a topic we were going to discuss just briefly, but I will now mark this off because I had talked again about the fridge magnets. We've got 1,500 of these, so I will bring you some if you'd like, and you can, when you see people, hey, Here you go. So, but anyway.
So you're saying yard signs work?
Sure, like we went on our morning walk and that was it. I was like, oh, that's right, we got to do that today.
Do we have more yard signs, or is there a way to get more yard signs?
Well, so that was, and that actually brings up a point. We had looked at and talked about yard signs before, and part of the money that we were granted by an anonymous donor last year, we were looking at doing yard signs. The challenges with yard signs are, even if you put them in specific places, sometimes they're not big enough for traffic driving by to be able to read them. And unless you're walking in the neighborhood, you can. So that's when we kind of thought about, well, if we had fridge magnets that we could pass out or give away at the different meetings that people come to, they could just pop it on their fridge and they have all our contact information and such on them, and a visual reminder every time you went to go get a drink or a snack. But then COVID.
Yeah, well, COVID has turned Lissy into a public promenade with dogs and people and babies and joggers and just families walking. So the one thing that COVID's done is there are people
stand out there like those guys in New York and in New Orleans. Here, you want to come to our meeting? Do you want to come to our meeting? Want to come to our meeting? Pass them out.
Well, bring me some, but I've been talking to them and saying, you know, where do you live? And they're all from Highland Heights. They're not coming, they're not trucking in from out of town, you know, to come walk in our neighborhood. So these are all the new neighbors, and they're all younger people than me. So, you know, we definitely did, when we did the survey and we said it flipped, we were right. It's definitely flipped.
Well, Ray, I'm not going to make a comment on how much younger they are than you. So
you don't have to, I know.
You're fully admitting it. Okay. All right. We are going way past our time. So, Courtney, did you have anything else to add?
No, the YouTube thing was the last thing I had. Just look for updates with that. I was going through videos today, trying to earmark the ones that neighbors attended that had significant things on the agenda. Obviously, there will probably be way too many, would be tedious, but hopefully we'll find a way to like crop them down to the relevant segments. But if you have an interest of that or in that, just keep an eye out and to like tell your neighbors, but also like on Facebook, stuff like that. If people can't make meetings, I mean, it's an excellent way to engage, you know, at least like see what's going on. Scroll back in history, see if there's anything like you haven't caught that's like the community garden, something like that. And also our neighborhoods, Cleveland Park, McFerrin Park, super great. Like always doing stuff, always welcome, and opening events up to us as well. And so definitely there's stuff going on here.
So we don't have a specific channel name yet. We have to have 100 subscribers to be able to specify a channel and a custom URL. But if you do a search on YouTube for Highland Heights Neighbors, you should be able to find our channel. But look also on the Facebook group, because the last month's video of this Zoom call is up there, and I will get this Zoom meeting posted within the next couple of days. I usually like try to trim out the excess before the meeting officially starts. So that's it. And another thing too is if you have a particular YouTube video of, say, your dog, or of something that you want to highlight around the neighborhood, don't hesitate to send me a link to a Dropbox with that video in it. I'd like that YouTube channel to kind of reflect not only these boring, long meetings, but also things going on in our neighborhood. So, don't hesitate to share videos that highlights what it's like to live in Highland Heights, aside from fireworks at 2 a.m. and ring videos that show people with guns going into garages, right, Courtney?
Yeah,
that we don't want to highlight.
I will say it's hard to imagine that sometimes just the photographs of what's going on today or tomorrow will be somehow like super exciting to other people. But even following that page I mentioned that has like the history of Northeast Nashville, I can't tell you how cool it is to see like different buildings and they're like, and what's there now, and like the same street views and oh gosh, this is what the nursery looked like, or this is this last photo, and some of it's just really neat. So you don't know what's going to, be really exciting to somebody else and be cool and I don't know, archival in a way. So
yep, if you're handy with a video camera and it's perfectly legal to put it up on YouTube, then please let me know if you've got something you want to share with folks, because we'd love to build that as just another window into our little square mile with Nashville. Speaking of a window into our little square mile with Nashville, I was looking through one of the East Nashville Facebook pages earlier and found a business that I want to kind of call out. I didn't even know this particular business was here, but La Mini Michoacana. It's a Mexican place over at 1605 Dickerson Pike. It's inside the Taqueria Andrea. It is a Mexican ice creamery, if you will. They do soft serve, and they do very traditional Mexican popsicles made with fresh fruit juices and all kinds of. If you've never been to one of these type of places, you might want to check them out. I thought it was kind of cool, no pun intended. And I never even knew it was here. It's just about a block and a half down from El Matate. This is their second summer in business, and apparently with COVID and coronavirus and all that, their traffic is down. I have not been paid for this. I'm not trying to advertise or anything. I'm just letting you know it's there. It might be an interesting place to drop in. I've had some of these types of desserts, and it's pretty darn cool. So I just wanted to call them out. They don't even know I was doing this, but you know, I thought that'd be kind of an interesting place to spotlight. If you have any particular business spotlights that you want to, you know, let me know. Please let me know. Yes, Ray. She's saying bye. Okay, bye, Ray. She's gone. And that's actually pretty much everything on the agenda. One quick roundtable. Does anybody have any last minute comments, questions, anything that they want, any feedback they want to give? Now's an opportunity before we sign off. Yes, Rachel.
I just remember last meeting we talked about the steering committee and how it's a separate meeting in between meetings. And I felt voluntold to attend, but I was not made aware of when those meetings are. If you could let me know if anybody else is interested in attending those, I think it would be helpful to be more.
So are you saying you want to be a part of the steering committee?
I'm saying it would be helpful to know when the steering committee meets and how often and what the agendas are, so that people are interested in attending, they could come. Like Andrew, who seems very engaged.
Yeah, Andrew, did you want to be part of the steering committee as well?
What does it do?
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, thrown under the bus. All right.
We meet once a month, generally the first week of every month. What time, Stacey?
It's I think we've talked about moving it to 6:30, but it has historically been 6 o'clock on the first Wednesday of every month.
And we set the agenda for the meeting. We talk about anything we've heard, if we've like been notified by neighbors, if notified by the council person. So, you know, we used to plan events and things like that. That hadn't happened lately. What else? What am I missing? We talk about how best to communicate, engage with neighbors, workshop stuff, try new things.
If we're going to have any anything that we want to spend some of our treasury on, like the fridge magnets, that was a discussion that we had over a couple of meetings on. Do we do the yard signs, or do we do the fridge magnets? So it's just basically a select group of, and usually it's select because we're elected to these positions, but it's a group of individuals that are made up of the general population that discuss and vote on things that we want to bring into the general membership, basically is the way it works. So cool. The meetings are not necessarily open meetings, but if you're interested in just seeing what kind of goes on in one, I can certainly send you the Zoom link for the next one that we're here. If you would do me a favor though, and make sure you send me your email address.
Yeah, we'll do.
And it's just send it to chairperson at Highland Heights Neighbors, no, HH Neighbors, excuse me. Chairperson at hhneighbors.com. I'll get it in my inbox and I'll make sure you get the link. And Rachel, if you would do the same thing too, just to make sure that I've got your proper address.
Cool. And the
last thing have it somewhere.
The last thing I was just gonna say is just like the general meeting, like the agenda is fairly loose, and we try to tailor to whatever's going on in the community or the community tells us is important at that given time. You can probably tell planning took over our lives at some point, and so that was a major focus because it was a major focus for our neighbors and it was a major challenge. And so really we try to just deal with whatever comes before us and try to, you know, find answers for people or try to provide resources. I don't know, build connection, you know, really. It's just kind of like we have so much alike and so much in common in our square mile that we all live here, and just trying to get people to like draw that connection and be resources to one another, because there's a lot of shared goals that I think most people want from living in their community. So we're really just here to try to facilitate whatever that is, you know?
And I will say that Linda Rex, who on the screen is listed as Grace Community in Nashville, she's also a member of our steering committee. So just so that we have a couple of more members that just couldn't make it tonight. Danny Pratt and Ashanti. Ashanti tried to dial in earlier, but for some reason her audio wasn't working, so I think she gave up. But usually we have a pretty good attendance at these meetings of our steering committee, and you are more than welcome to reach out to us at any time. I think most all of us are on the Facebook group except Ashanti. So you know, you're more than welcome to reach out. That we're here to help you guys any way we can. If nobody has anything else, then I think we're pretty much done. And I sincerely apologize for running as long as it did, but a lot of great conversations, because you know that's what we're here to do. We're here to educate and engage neighbors. So, Rachel, did you have anything else? One last check. Andrew, do you have anything else? Nope. Lee, I can't see you and can't hear you, but oh, Linda. Yes, ma'am.
I want to apologize for getting here late. For some reason, my brain at 7 o'clock. So I apologize. Did you get the
Don't let it
minutes
happen
down,
again.
or do I need to do them? Oh, okay.
No, because this one's being recorded, I didn't anticipate or didn't really elect anybody to take minutes.
Okay.
But we'll be able to you'll be able to get them off the recording, or
Okay. All right. We'll do that.
we can talk about it. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about
All right,
that.
folks. Nobody has anything else. Thank you all for hanging in there the full time. Thanks to everybody else that joined us. If you're watching the recap of this later, we had a nice meeting tonight, good number of attendants. Thank you all. Anything we can do, let us know. Have a very good evening, and we'll see you around the hood. Bye.